Welcome to the Warships Podcast with your host, Kellorn, Venicera, and Arun.
Hello and welcome to 2019 and episode 114 of the Warships Podcast. As some of you know, the US government is in shutdown right now, but the upside of that is that it means friend of the podcast, NoZoupForYou, is free to join us for some quality discussion. Welcome back, Zoop. I wish the circumstances were a little better.
Yeah, I do too. I kind of want to get paid. That's important for living, but it's all good. It allows me to stay home and take care of other things around the house. So I'm upset, but I'm not too upset.
So Arun has been wondering if you were bringing us soup today. I assume it was cup of noodles.
Actually, I've got tea right now. I brought tea.
Milk or lemon?
Black tea.
Oh, okay.
I'll take it.
It's probably colder where Arun is than where you are, Zoop.
Probably a little bit. It's actually kind of nice out today.
So I'm afraid I gave up one of your secrets a couple episodes ago when Kami and I were talking about when you, he, Raptor, and I were all drinking on my back patio and you fell asleep. It's really too bad the video that you were recording that night never turned out because it was like a mini podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, it was. And I got home and I looked at the audio and the audio was just horrible. It would not have done well. I can see if I still have that video, but it is unfortunate because it was a really good talk. And I wish the audio just worked out, but it sounded like multiple cats screeching and would not have done what we were talking about any justice.
Yeah, it was a fun discussion, and we may have to reconvene that group of people and have something similar in the future because that was a lot of fun.
Hopefully.
So, as always, it's good to have you on the show, Zoop, and we have tons of talk about today. But I want to start out with what we've all been doing for the last couple of weeks, the New Year's events. In that vein, I have something of a confession to make. I complained long and hard about how much steel that Wargaming was giving away with these New Year's events, much of it right here on the podcast. But when push came to shove, I was one of those people grinding it out and raking in all the steel that I could, with one notable exception that we'll talk about in a little later. The upside is that the steel event was one of the factors that was actually reigniting my interest in playing World of Warships after several months of suffering from burnout. My dirty confession out of the way a bit, have you guys been enjoying the New Year's events? And has anything about the last fortnight or so stood out to you?
So I think this was a wonderful move on Wargaming's part. I started playing co-op, and I can't tell you the last time I've played co-op. And like you, I kind of a little bit of fatigue right there, and I found myself grinding out all my premiums and everything else in co-op, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I had more fun than I thought I would, and the really neat thing about it was you're playing with what is co-op? It's not the full 12, right? Is it 7 or
is it 7-on-7 or 9-on-9?
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those two. But anyhow, you're with 7 or 9 other people doing the exact same thing. There was no vitriol. There was no negativity. It was one of the most positive World of Warships experiences I've ever had, playing these 5 or 6 minute battles, just YOLOing, racking up damage for the other various missions you had going on, and getting these snowflakes, mission and battle after battle after battle. So, I got to give it a hand to Wargaming there. I don't know if they had intended this to happen, but it wound up being an absolute blast. And I think the majority of the players, it was a grind, but I think people enjoyed it.
What do you mean enjoyed it? Isn't that still going on?
Well,
it's our semantics president.
Okay, so are enjoying it. I think the majority of the hardcore players probably got most of their snowflakes out of the way by now, and I've gone in for some ships that I've missed every now and then, and it's not like it was during the Christmas break. So now, you've maybe got half a team of co-op players and half bots on the same team. Not like it was a week or so ago, but yeah, I guess enjoying it still.
So one of the things that I found that I had way more tier 8 to 10 premiums than I thought I did. And it was honestly a not insignificant amount of time that I spent grinding out those snowflakes. I think I had something like 32 of the premiums alone. So, those were the ones I did first. Obviously, they were 200 steel. But, I played some ships that I hadn't played in a year or more.
I played some ships that I hadn't either, and I wound up, and it's hard to say if you're doing good in co-op, because co-op is what it is, but, some ships I noticed I was YOLOing a lot better in than others, which made me say, maybe I should give this this ship a go in regular battles, random battles, which I did, and, you kind of rediscover lost loves by doing this, so, again, it just kind of had silver lining in it, and yeah, it was a grind and playing a lot of ships, but did you enjoy it?
Oh, I very much enjoyed it. There were a few bad apples in even in co-op, but that we'll kind of put that aside. I didn't feel very invested in any one particular ship. I guess was one of the things that I noticed about it is that, I played it and then it was like, okay, it's over and I'm probably not going to play that ship again. I guess one of the questions I had for you guys, especially Vanessa, Arun, did you guys buy anything with the steel that you earned?
I haven't actually earned it yet. The reason I asked earlier is because I've played like maybe 6-7 Snowflake games so far. But I did notice it lasts until almost the end of January, so I still have quite a bit of time.
Well, I've been testing as much as I can with our new ships that we've been testing, so I haven't done much with the Snowflakes. I mean, I played, my favorite ships here and there, and, if I get the win and get it, then great. But I've really been, the time that I've had available to me, I have been really focusing and honing in on all the new ships that we have to test.
And we'll be talking about that a little later on the podcast for sure. Zoop, did you have anything that you were shooting for with the steel that you earned from these events?
Yeah, I'm shooting for the Stalingrad. Probably I wouldn't say every other person. I think a lot of people right now, from what I've been seeing, if you've got Stalingrad, you're going for a ship like the Black, or if you don't think you're going to be getting enough steel for the Stalingrad, I see people opting out for the Black or something like that. So I'm going to hold out for Stalingrad and maybe even hold on to it and see what else Wargaming has coming down the pipeline, because I don't know, Stalingrad, it just didn't appeal to me for some reason. I mean, maybe get it for clan battles, but outside of that, I just don't see myself playing it a lot in random battles.
The rumor is that Azuma is going to be sold for steel, which would make sense because it's a tier 10 premium. I've been having so much fun in Azuma that I am loath to spend the steel that I just earned on Black, even if it's going to be amazing in the tier 9 rank season. I think I'm going to save up for Azuma itself.
That's what I would do if I didn't have the Black, because honestly, it might be good in the upcoming ranked season, but outside of that, I don't know. Oh my god, I don't know how much you would want to play her, because the torpedoes are, well, you can't really even call them torpedoes.
Wait, are you talking about Black or Azuma?
Black.
Talking about
He's talking about the sea mines.
The sea mines, those sea
well,
mines.
I love the sea mines, but that I understand. Maybe kind of respect your opinion, but those torpedoes are awesome. Thank you.
So
but Azuma,
I guess one of the
needs torpedoes, in my opinion. Otherwise, I'll just play Zao because I know you like the ship. It's a mini Yamato. It kind of looks like Yamato from certain angles, but it has no torpedoes, and so I'd much rather play Zao.
I mean, it has the one torpedo. It's almost as fast as the Black torpedoes, too.
All right, well, let's save the Azuma hate for a little later. But, we talked a few minutes ago, I stated that there was one aspect of the steel gathering that I was having an issue with, and that's the Nerves of Steel mission requiring me to play the Prinz Eitel Frederich. Now, and that's like 2019 steel, I think. And now, when we were testing PEF, I generally found her to be a reasonable ship at tier 6. But maybe I just didn't play her enough, because playing Game Center when steel is at stake has been a miserable experience. Now, Zoop, you put out a video the other day, which I thought that was uncanny, because you managed to put all of the hitherto disorganized thoughts into words that I was having. But there was one aspect that you didn't mention, and it's, how did we miss this? How did we play this ship in testing and not see this coming as CCs?
So I think what happened was we got the PEF. We played the first version, which the first version was not that bad. It had stronger AA guns on it. I don't know if they changed the guns on it or not, but I think what happened for many of us, we played that first iteration, and being that it was a lower tier battleship, and I think other stuff was coming out at the time also, I think it got its nerf, and most of us just didn't go back to it and try it again. So we had this expectation of what it was, and we knew it had been nerfed, and on paper, we knew that it was going to kind of be a sucky nerf, but after that, we didn't go back to it. And then it comes. It's got this mission with it that can yield steel, and T6 ranked gameplay comes out, and it just turned out to be a miserable experience. And I full-heartedly stand by what I said. Barring some of the low tier battleships out there, Mikasa, I really don't count those low tier battleships. I really think that this was Mikasa, that is a premium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I really think that this is the absolute worst premium battleship Wargaming has put out by leaps and bounds. And I know some people out there are doing good with it. And again, you can do good with any ship. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that are awesome in Krasny Krim and absolutely love it, but that still doesn't make it a good ship. PF is just horrible, and these missions tied to it are just absolutely miserable.
So the one that would stand out to me as maybe the only one that rivals the PEF Zoop as a battleship, probably Ashitaka, because that ship is just a miserable experience. Vanessa, what were your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I did test the ship after the changes, and I remember that they nerfed the Sigma down a bit. That was one of the changes from when we first initially tested the ship. When we first initially tested PEF, I felt it was a really good ship. After the changes, yes, you could really feel the nerf. I think beforehand I was running an AA module just to make the AA even deadlier in that first iteration. But the second one, I really felt, okay, you need the aiming systems module, because God, anything over like 11, 12 kilometers, your shells are just not going to hit whatever it is you're aiming at. And, I feel that's still true. I feel like you need that aiming module just to hope, to get one shell. But I just started doing, and I know this is, very small sample size. I just started doing my missions, and, I'm 100% win rate. Haven't sunk yet, and doing pretty darn good in PEF. But I think we had this discussion among us CCs yesterday, and I think it has to come down to playstyle a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The ship it needs help. And I don't know how it went from what we tested, which was okay. Maybe it might have been better, but PEF cannot take a hit. It's a glass cannon, and its guns are not that really accurate. So I don't know what Wargaming was really trying to hope for with this. I mean, it's a battle cruiser, and it's not really going to take its hits, and it's not really going to dish out, a ton of speed or a ton of damage and speed, unless you really kind of play it. And, with my play style, I kind of like to be aggressive, but I'm timingly aggressive. I kind of watch the battle and, just kind of sneak into an area, or even just kind of wade into an area and then make the right time to strike, and then just, go in and start killing things. I've had really good games, but it's not for everyone.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Sigma nerf, because to me, I'm not having an issue landing shots. It's what those shots are doing when I do land them. And I mean, I can Citadel cruisers in it. It's not quite as easy to do as with the Dunkirk or the New Mexico or Kami's beloved Fuso, but I can still do it. it's just against battleships. You cannot do anything. I have not landed a single citadel against the battleship. Doesn't matter if I'm aiming at the right place, if I'm 5 kilometers out, 7 kilometers out, 10 kilometers out, it just doesn't seem to matter whatsoever. The shells are the worst thing about this ship. And I don't know what's wrong with these shells, but it literally feels like you're firing Nerf darts with them at battleships, which is not a good thing if you're in a battleship. And like you said, you get into brawl. And you made a good point about the armor as well, because that video that I posted, it had an interesting effect. There was a lot more conversation on it than I thought there would be for the PEF. And I guess that can just be chalked up to there's a lot of lovers of German battleships out there, and I can understand that. But some people brought up turtleback armor and everything else, and if it has turtleback armor, I don't see it, because
it does not.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
That's what I thought, because like you said, this ship cannot take a beating whatsoever, which is a bad thing for a ship with its speed, because the speed is pretty much the only thing the ship has going for it. And using that speed would work out great if you were in a ship that could take a hit, because you could get in there and you could brawl on the objective, especially in ranked. But the fact that you just get eaten up the instant you try to do that, I really don't understand the purpose of this battleship. I don't know what they intend it to be used for.
So really, in my mind, the greatest travesty about PEF is that when you can't damage something with AP and you try and pull out the HE shells, they don't do anything. I mean, they don't do damage. They don't do set fires. Like that was the biggest travesty of me, is that you just didn't have any options. But everyone, have you played the PEF since it's released here? Have you been experiencing some of the same issues that we've been having, or are you happy with the way that the ship turned out?
Well, I wanted to mention about the speed. You mentioned speed, but Dunkirk is actually faster, and even the Fusa is only 3.5 knots slower. So it's not like she really has the speed going for her either. But here's the strategy you're supposed to use with her: aim where the enemy isn't. Then you might have a chance of hitting the target.
I like that.
You're not wrong.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Now, like Zub was saying, I've had some success hitting cruisers with the AP. I mean, I've gotten some citadels and stuff. But even then, things like Myokos, which you see a lot of while you're playing PEF, they are disturbingly difficult to citadel with the Prinz Eitel Frederic's guns. And that, if anything, tells you like everything you need to know about how bad the AP is.
Go ahead.
She basically feels like a Bayern without the good armor.
Yeah, that's crappier guns.
Yeah, exactly. Crappier guns too. I said that fact in my video. I would play a Bayern over PEF any day. If you gave me the two and said I had to choose one, I would go for the Bayern every single time. This is interesting. I think this is one of the few ships that we've come across that we're pretty much in unanimous agreement about.
Yeah, no. Unless you're Lord Zath, who is a complete fanboy for this ship for some reason.
He's just odd, though.
He's a nice guy, but a little odd. Yeah.
Well, we told him he was odd, and I remember him saying that in chat. He's like, "I like PEF," and I think you're the one there, just like, "Well, you're just weird."
You gotta call it like I see it, right? Well, we've got a few new test ships to talk about, but before we delve into that, I want to talk about the devblog announcement that the fire duration on Alaska and Azuma is getting increased from 45 seconds to 60 seconds. On the face of it, this doesn't seem like an extreme change, but it's garnered some derision from the community as a whole, and the justification was that Alaska and Azuma were overperforming their survival rates, and therefore needed to be nerfed. So literally the first thing that I thought when reading that statement was, aren't Kronstadt and Stalingrad overperforming in the same way? So my question to you guys is it justified to only apply this fire duration nerf to Alaska and Azuma while leaving Stalingrad and Kronstadt alone?
I don't like this move whatsoever.
I think the reason why is because they consider all of them premium ships, which I think, again, they shouldn't, because they should create a category called like reward ship that's separate from a premium ship, so they could nerf them. But I think the way they could get around it is they could make a new class of ships. I don't know, call it battle cruisers, large cruisers, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then put all of them into that same group, and then change the group all at once. And they could easily just nerf the Stalingrad and Kronstadt in the same way. And honestly, I think they shouldn't do it only for the Azuma and the Alaska.
So I know we're probably going to talk about the Azuma a little later, and since it's one of those new ships on the horizon, but I don't agree with this nerf at all. I don't think it bodes well for either of the ships. I mean, both ships have really, really good survivability, but yes, there is that whole, well, you know, the Kronstadt and the Stalingrad aren't getting this nerf that's unfair. And I do agree with that and see the argument, since Stalingrad probably performs better than all of them. But after playing the Azuma and Alaska, they have a very, very unique play style to them. All these battle cruisers do. They're not nimble. You really can't move if you get into it's very easy to put yourself in a bad situation in them. And fire is going to be used exclusively against them, I think, because they stand up very well when angled properly against AP, all AP, even going up to Yamato. These ships are hard nuts to crack. So I think the HE is going to be used exclusively against them. And the problem with that is, yeah, I guess it all goes back to, if you're going to do it to the Azuma and the Kronstadt, you should do it to the Stalingrad. And if you don't do it to the Stalingrad and the Kronstadt, you shouldn't do it to the Alaska and the Azuma. So, yeah, Arun, you pretty much nailed it right there.
Vanessa, you said you've been doing some testing on these ships, and I presume that you played both Alaska and Azuma in the last little bit. Do you feel like their survivability was such that it required this nerf?
Well, to be honest, I thought Alaska was getting caught on fire too much. But that was just kind of my experience testing it. It's like, boy, I am always on fire in this ship. And Azuma, I don't know, maybe, but Azuma just, like, I was just dishing out so much damage in it that I really didn't care if I was on fire or not. So I don't know. Like, Alaska seemed like it, it had potential, but it was really like, you need to be in the right situation with the ship, and it's not gonna be for everyone. Azuma just feels like, and I know other CCs have said this, is like a side grade to Zao. And its guns are pretty good. And I mean, on fire, not on fire, trolley armor, like, I don't know, it just didn't bother me as much in that. And I mean, Kronstadt and Stalingrad, it was kind of the same. It's like on fire, not on fire, okay, just bow tank it, and it's balance and just shoot out those Stalin guided shells and watch everything die. And I agree.
I agree with you there. It's the Alaska. I think the Alaska of the four ships right there is the one that needs that fire reload the most. I think the other ships are fine, like you said, but Alaska seems like it's put on fire a lot. I don't think it has quite the survivability of the Azuma or the Kronstadt. I think out of all of them, if any were nerfed, it should not have been that one.
Well, on the other hand, I don't think this fire change is going to do basically anything to the Azuma, because here's what's going to happen. Okay, fires last longer on the Azuma. Cool. Except the ship is 19 kilometers away and firing HE at you with its rail guns, so you're not going to set her on fire all that much anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But on the Alaska, I agree. She probably doesn't need it, or doesn't warrant this nerf.
Yeah, you guys are in a 100% agreement with where I was at. Like, Azuma, whatever, if it's not a big deal. But Alaska, I have a lot harder time staying alive in Alaska than I do in any of the other tier 9 or 10 premium super cruisers, or whatever we're going to call them. But super cruisers does seem like a pretty good term. Can we agree to call them that from now on?
Yeah, I think that's a great term for them.
I think we should have started. I think we should have used it on the Stalingrad right at the start. It would have caught on.
Well, I think Stalingrad is just the mega cruiser, or it's just I think ultimately, though, the issue is at least I felt, particularly with Alaska, if you are forced to bow in and you don't really have a way to turn and disengage and get out of there, like, you're just going to melt down. Like, you just do not have the longevity of a normal battleship, and you're just going to die. Like, it might be a little slowly and a little quicker than battleships, but it didn't feel like it had the overall good survivability as some of the other ships I tested.
It was funny. I was playing Alaska the other day after playing a lot of Azuma, and I tried to do the same gameplay style as I'd been playing in Azuma, and it didn't work. Like, all the things that I was able to get away with in Azuma, the Alaska just was completely unforgiving about, and I was like, wow, that was not successful.
Hey, what is the hit points on the Kronstadt?
Like,
it's 72k, something like that.
Okay,
Kronstadt with survivability expert next to Burgogne is almost the same.
Yeah, Arun just typed a very good point here. Alaska has the least amount of hit points out of all of them, which I think it's kind of interesting that they did that, and I kind of wonder why.
It's funny because they actually nerfed that hit point total, didn't they? It used to be a little higher.
It was higher in the beginning.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, we'll see how that all turns out. But I do want to get on to us actually talking about Azuma. We've been flirting around the edges of it here for quite a while. So this was obviously, or well, maybe not obviously, but it was my personal favorite of the ships that we tested. Full disclosure, I'm in love with almost everything about this ship. I find that she's gorgeous. I'm an IJN junkie. Her playstyle is fun enough to make me keep wanting to play her. Even when I should be testing the other ships, I wanted to play Azuma. Last episode, I had a few first impressions about her, that maybe her HE shells needed a bit of a buff, and how I was unhappy with her AP. Well, her AP is still garbage versus battleships, but once you understand that you only shoot AP at cruisers, and that you need to switch ammo types a lot while you're playing this ship, Expert Reloader kind of becomes a must-have, and the fun really began for me in the ship. So I guess we've talked a little bit about Azuma as we've gone through, but is it, like, I don't know that Azuma needs anything at this point. I think you could throw Azuma into the game the way she is right now, and there was be nothing wrong with that. Even if you did throw this fire duration nerf at her, I think she's ready. She is more ready for release than I think Alaska is.
I would.
She doesn't have torpedoes.
I think she's.
Oh, we're going to come back to that.
I think she's more ready for release than the Stalingrad is.
You've got a good point there, too.
Shots fired.
I would agree with you. It's funny. I had trouble with the ship in the beginning just because I was trying to play it like a cruiser. I was trying to play it like a heavy cruiser or just a cruiser in general, just that traditional way that we play cruisers. And again, you really don't do that with these super cruiser classes. These are very much battle tank from a distance and use your rail guns to light things on fire. I know some of the other CCs were talking about that it's not a ZOW, and it's not intended to be a ZOW. It's not a ZOW. It's not going to play like a ZOW. The ZOW has a different function. It lights things on fire. It's quick, but it also can get...
See, my argument, Zoop, is that it's more like Henri the Fourth,
yes,
than it is like ZOW.
Yeah, the ZOW can get citadeled easily. You can one-shot a ZOW if you're, if you get a good hit on it. You're not going to be able to do that on Azuma unless the Yamato just has blessed RNG and gets up within like 10 kilometers broadside on it. Azuma can tank. I think I'm averaging over 2 million potential damage in her. She has a very acquired taste. She has a different play style. And like I said, some of the CCs were saying that the HE wasn't good and the AP's not good. Well, the HE, I've rolled 10,000 damage against battleships with her HE, and that's not including the fire. Her HE is potent, absolutely potent. And her AP, again, like you said, and I think we even discussed this in the channels at one point, Expert Reloader is what you need on this ship, because you're going to be switching things up very, very often from AP on cruisers to HE on battleships. And I think this ship might prove very, very popular.
So here's my thing, is that I found her to be very comfortable to play and very comfortable to shoot. Now, Vanessa, when I first started testing Azuma, I thought that she needed something, like she needed something else that she didn't have. And, torpedoes would be the obvious answer. But the more that I played Azuma, the less I thought the torpedoes were necessary, because the way that I felt like was the most effective way to play Azuma, you would never even be in the 12-kilometer torpedo range. You stay at that 15 plus kilometers with her almost all the time. And so, the argument for having the torpedoes is that you need some kind of last ditch against somebody that is kind of charging you, or you have to charge in at the last minute. But, I just never found myself in positions that I would have used the torpedoes even if I had them.
Well, that's an easy solution. Just give her 20-kilometer torpedoes.
Oh, Aaron.
Or
I
why
guess
stop at 20?
Senjo? Sure, that would be amazing.
Why stop at 20? Let's go 30.
So I guess, Vanessa, realistically, as you were playing Azuma, how many times would you honestly have used the torpedoes if you'd had them?
I can recall 2 games, but I think that comes down to play style, because it's just, I know I am much more of a aggressive, get into position, get into the center of the map, get into the thick of it player than maybe you are. I know you like to go on a flank with Yamato and just go to town with those guns, and I'm very different in my play style. So for me, if I'm looking at both Zao and Azuma, I am sitting there thinking, okay, well, what can I do in both of these ships, and what's going to suit my play style, and what's going to be, whatever scenario comes up, what ship is going to give me more options to, accomplish that scenario. And I just look at it and like, yeah, it's a good ship. I'm not saying that it's a bad ship. I'm not saying that, a lot of people are going to love Azuma. It's got great guns, trolley armor. It's going to be a great tier 10 for, I think, most players. But I mean, for me, I want more. If I'm looking at the options and the choices, I don't see why I would not choose Zao. That's my play style.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, play style. And you mentioned, pushing up and kind of being that vanguard, the tip of the spear. And I found you really can't do that in the Azuma. And
you absolutely cannot.
And while it does have very, very generous concealment, almost to the point that I think I'm going to take that captain's skill off, just because you don't need that concealment on it, because the ship's not designed to fire at 10 kilometers in. Like Kalorn said earlier, it's fire at 19 kilometers out and set things on fire, as they can set you back on fire. Again, it does come down to play style. And these super cruisers very much have a static play style. They're not made to zip around the map like the Zao, using that that rudder shift mod or anything else, like the Hindi can use, or even to lesser extent the Des Moines. I know the Des Moines kind of plays similar to these, but you don't have to play it that way. These ships very much are static ships, and the moment you find yourself in a bad situation, you're stuck, because if you start to turn, I swear that the Yamato has better agility than the Azuma. The Azuma handles like a gigantic battleship, and the instant you find yourself in a bad situation that you can't get out of, 2 things are either going to happen. You're going to get burned to death, or another battleship's going to get a flank on you and you're going to get wrecked from the side, or you're going to try and get out of that situation and you're going to get wrecked either way. So these super cruisers have a very unique purpose. They're designed to sit there. They're designed to just absolutely be a pain in the rear for these enemy teams to take care of. Whereas, like you, I enjoy the Zao a lot. I mean, the Zao, you zip around the map, hey, catch me if you can, firing your HE and just setting the world on fire, and then throwing your 13-kilometer torps the way of the enemy. So Azuma will be popular, but it'll be popular among a very specific group of players. And I think part of that's going to be, clan players, obviously, are going to look for a new ship, though I don't know what Azuma is going to bring over Stalingrad, since it doesn't have radar on it. That's going to be interesting there. And that's another thing to look at, of these 2 ships. what is the point of Azuma or bringing Azuma to clan battles when you already have Stalingrad? So
again, I actually thought about this quite a bit, Zoop. And the fact of the matter is that you would never take Azuma over Stalingrad. They don't fill the same role. What you might do is if you're running something like 2 Henris or 3 Henris, you replace one of the Henris with an Azuma. And the reason that you would do that is that there are times where you would be able to go dark and turn away in the Azuma and set up a crossfire that you can't go dark in the Henri. The downside is that the Henri has the reload boost, so it has a higher burst DPM, and it's just faster when you use the speed boost. So the question is going for teams is it going to come down to, do you want that kind of alpha strikey damage that the Azuma can bring, or do you want the DPM that the Henri can bring with its reload booster with the speed? So
basically you're saying
it's a flank ship. Yeah, it's a flank ship. There's not
clans might be able to utilize that concealment of the Azuma to their advantage. That what is it, 10.6 or 11?
11.7.
Yeah, 11.7. So yeah, and that is out of. I don't know off the top of my head what Stalingrad is. I would assume
Stalin's like the 12 or 13.
Yeah, exactly. So that is a benefit to the Azuma, but again though, versus a Stalingrad, I don't think many Stalingrad players are going to rush to purchase this ship.
Well, the advantage, and I have fought Stalingrads in it, and the advantage is that its shells without IFHE penetrate Stalingrad armor. The 50 millimeter deck armor on these ships, you get the penetration with these guns, and that's a really important part. And that that's why Henri players take inertial fuse for HE shells. They can with inertial fuse for HE shells, they can penetrate 50 millimeters of deck armor, and it makes them effective against Stalingrads and Moskvas and the deck armor on Kurfürsts and Yamatos and stuff like that. And so that's why you take that. In this case, in Azuma, you can get that ability without having to spend the 4 captain's points. Well, what are you going to spend those 4 captain points on? You're going to spend it on RPF. You put RPF on Azuma, and suddenly Azuma, like I hunt destroyers in Azuma all day long. And if you can corner them against islands, you can corner them against the map edge, and they don't see it coming because they are like, oh, that guy can't hurt me. He doesn't have a radar.
Well, I can't wait for the French supercruiser.
The Baguette.
Is that what we're going to call it?
Yeah, we'll call it the Baguette.
But like I said, I'm in love with a lot of aspects of Azuma. She really, as Vanessa said, she suits my playstyle, and I think that she had a really good point that it's going to come down to what do you like to play, and if you don't like that kind of flanky type of play, then Azuma is really not going to be for you.
Or that sit stationary and sling HE bow tanking.
Yeah. Honestly, I had better luck with her bow pointed out. You use her concealment to come in and you kind of do the U-turn, and then you point your bow out and you shoot back over the shoulder, because that gives you many more options of getting out of bad situations.
Yeah, I agree with that. And her rear is actually pretty strong as well.
But Arun is correct in what he was by flank. Vanessa met Kellorn sits on the map edge. I've hit a lot of map borders in Azuma. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, that's what they're there for.
Neustrashimy?
Yeah, Neustrashimy. So Neustrashimy is a new Russian destroyer at tier 9 and is honestly an odd duck. She looks odd, her weapon setup is odd, her consumables feel odd, and playing her feels just odd. She's neither hide nor hair, and I've really had a hard time figuring out how to play her. I should state up front that Russian destroyers have never really been my jam, so that may enter into this equation too. But I feel like she's just kind of confused about if she should fire her guns, if she should fire her torpedoes, because neither one seems to be all that great of an option. Her redeeming qualities for me have been the 5.6 kilometer detection range, which is equal to the Shimakaze, the low detection range, which is of 1.3 kilometers on her torpedoes, and her array of consumables. But I guess, where are you guys at with Neustrashimy? I mean, do you think that she even has a place in the game right now?
I like her. I like destroyers in general, and it's nice to see some high tier destroyer love again. What was the last one we had? Black at tier 9. So it's good to see another high tier reward, or whatever they're going to give this out as. Maybe not reward, but however they do it, it's nice to see it. And like you said, that fight. if you're having trouble playing her as a Russian destroyer, that's the problem right there. You're playing her as a Russian destroyer. She is very much not a Russian destroyer. That 5.6 concealability, you can challenge caps and you can cap. Again, though, dependent on what enemy destroyers the other team has, because with your guns, since you only have 2 on the front and 2 at the rear, you're not going to be able to outgun, a Haragumo or a Kitakaze or, even a Fletcher is going to give you a really hard time.
What can outgun a Haragumo in this game?
Nothing.
Like, honestly.
Nothing. That ship's still ridiculous. But the thing about Neustrashimy is it's very much like a USN destroyer. I mean, it's a jack of all trades, a master of none. You've got 10-kilometer torps, which they can do very well in some circumstances, but with radar, you're just at radar range with that, so you're not going to be able to launch them at range that Yu Yang or Tier 10 destroyers are. You've got guns that actually the guns aren't that bad, and it's just a matter of using them in the right way. And the guns have range on them, and they do have good fire setting capability as well. So the ship, it's a unique play style because you have to use your torps and your guns, but your guns, you can sit and smoke and hit ships 13 kilometers away and set them on fire fairly easy. I think the best way to put this ship is, everyone will find something they like about it. And I think everybody will find something that they absolutely don't like about it, because it borrows from almost every single nation. But like you said, the fact that you've got so many modules as well is kind of nice as well. You've got that heal that can keep you alive. So for my part, I've been enjoying her.
So yeah, you hit a lot of kind of points with this ship that I really feel is good. The more that I play Neustrashimy, the more I actually kind of like it. It is a support destroyer. If you like playing a support role in the game, if you like, multiple options, multiple things that you can try and do in a match. Honestly, when I looked at this destroyer, I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a Russian version of the Fletcher, except minus the guns. But, the thing that this destroyer kind of makes me feel of is Hatsuharu. And I love the Hatsuharu. And I actually like the torpedoes on this ship. As long as you have 10 kilometers, you can work with it. I think, the 9.2 on some of the other destroyers, especially at Tier 8, is where, it really starts to hurt it a bit in a prolific environment of radar. But this ship, its concealment is just dastardly low for a Russian destroyer. And that's the thing. You can't look at this destroyer as a Russian destroyer. I took one look at it and I was like, oh, it's a Fletcher with, less guns. And the fact that you have all of these modules, all of these, you can heal, you can AA and smoke and zip around. It's like, I was like, and why can't Fletcher have these things? Like a, Russian bias, maybe. The guns, looking at them, not too much historically on like the setup, but it looks like this might have been like an AA destroyer or more kind of set for that role with those guns that I have. They look kind of like AA-ish in their setup. But no, I love the torpedoes. I went exactly with the same mindset that I have with Fletcher. Use your torpedoes, sometimes use your guns. I don't mind that you have two. Like I said, I love Hatsuharu and I love, the guns on the Hatsuharu and I use them. And it's got great concealment. You've got all this utility. It's like you've got Batman's utility belt and you just go there and are like, oh, I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to use that one. And I'm going to go in here and cap and just kind of stealth and see who I can pull out. Other destroyer, you can make other destroyers uncomfortable. You can kind of hunt and just kind of keep ships, kind of lit and spotted. You can kind of run away. I think the problem here that I see is you've got all these other vodka burners out there and they absolutely zip around the map and the speed on Neustrashimy is a bit slow. Even with the speed boost, it's like, why am I not like really getting places compared to other DDs? So the more I play it, the more I like the ship. But this is one that not a lot of people, I think, are really going to like. This is going to be for those players who really like a challenge and really like okay, here's all the tools. Let's see what the game and scenario gives me, and let's see what I can make of these tools and of this ship.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I went in the same way as you. I looked at it as a Russian Fletcher. And like you said, with the 5.6 concealment and the 10-kilometer torpedoes, that is a perfectly fine combination for those destroyer players out there who play destroyers a lot. It just comes down to map awareness and knowing where all the radar cruisers are and avoiding them. And once you do that, this ship can absolutely wreck battleships, non-radar cruisers, and the works. And the torpedoes also have a pretty quick reload as well. I think it's right at about a minute and a half, if I can recall off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But like you said, I don't think everybody's going to love this destroyer, but if it came down to one or the other, I would take this over the Azuma. I'm actually more excited about this because I like destroyers, and we've kind of been starved for good high-tiered destroyers as of late. So I can see players trying this ship out just out of pure interest. And I think those that do might find that they actually like what they're getting once they can get past the fact that it is a Russian destroyer that plays more like a USN destroyer.
Man, I can't wait until you guys find out this destroyer called Yugumo. That would be amazing, right? Because if you actually look at the numbers on that ship, the Yugumo literally outdamages the Neustrashimy in every aspect. I'm talking like 20% more gun DPM, which means Shimakaze does the same. So that ship's guns are really, 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 really potato, which is okay because I think she is basically meant to be an anti-air DD, and I really wouldn't compare her to the Fletcher because again, Fletcher also has really, really good guns. The ship cannot fight anything basically with the guns except at long range. Because she's a Soviet DD, which means that her guns are super accurate and they actually get somewhere fairly quickly, which I think she is, well, the idea of the fleet support destroyer is probably what she is. And I think she would fit well. If she were tier 10 and like stronger to boot, I guess she would be Grozovoi then, but if she were like that, I think she would actually be a ship that might be played in... if not clan battles, then at least competitive games, because she has good anti-air, and that's rather important at times.
Do you think that heal would also be enticing for
yes,
clan players?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Yeah. The competitive aspects of Neustrashimy do look impressive, and you would take her for a lot of the same reasons that a lot of people take Grozovoi. So I agree with that. I just have a hard time with her because like you can't win a fight against another DD, and if you can't do that, it's hard to be in this position in the caps.
108k DPM is what she has. Yugumo has 135k. This is without any upgrades or anything involved. So that's a severe disadvantage.
Here's the other thing about Neustrashimy that I found is that she is a captain skill sponge. Like, you look at the captain skills and you're like, I need all of these, and I can only take like 6. And that was one of the big things about playing her, is that you're going to have to make some pretty hard choices on the captain skills to decide how, what are you going to do? And I ended up doing BFT and some of the gun things because I actually wanted to try and use her guns to win fights in caps, because that's what it felt like she should be doing. Because I agree that the range on the torps of 10 kilometers is fine, with her concealment. The problem is that they're just slow. Like, hitting anything with them is just difficult. That you can't, anybody that is playing actively at high tiers, they're going to expect you to be shooting torpedoes and avoid them.
I mean, perhaps there's 65 knots, and it's very comparable to a lot of the U.S. NTORPs. So, I'm sure I speak for Zoop on it. Like, we're used to that. We're used to making those torps work. So for a I guess, I don't play Russian DDs. So for someone who's not really used to, the standard Russian destroyers, I came into this with a different mindset, and I've been rather enjoying the ship. I would say from when I have tested with other Russian destroyers, I felt the shells were a little more floaty than normal Russian destroyer shells. So I feel there is some difference there. I don't know. Does everyone else kind of feel the same?
They felt like Russian guns to me.
Yeah, I thought in the salvos that I was actually landing on my target, they were doing decent damage too. I mean, just with less shells hitting. So they felt Russian to me. But I think the floaty might come from the fact that you were probably like me firing at ships a little further out than what we'd normally be firing at, even in a Khabarovsk or other Russian destroyers. I think with my setup, I was able to touch past 13.5 kilometers in them. I'd have to re-look at the way I've got my ship set up, but I
think you need AFT to do that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I had AFT on mine.
Because I'm looking at it like stock right now. It's 12.8.
Yeah, so I had
we
AFT.
do need to talk about floaty shells, and the floaty shells we need to talk about are on Leone, because Leone is not. Oh God, I'm triggered about this. So give me a second here, guys. I have nothing but complaints about Leone.
You're triggered.
I'm totally triggered. I mentioned on Twitter that while I was testing her, I felt like I could throw a rock faster than Leone's shells go. You literally will not believe the trajectories until you see them being fired out of this ship. It's utterly absurd, in my opinion. But she has 8 guns at tier 6. And as a destroyer, and when you actually land your shots, you like wreck other destroyers. But like, therein lies the problem, I don't even want to talk about her 51 knot, 12 kilometer torpedoes off of Duca d'Aosta. But this is a ship that I cannot love. And I guess, did any of you guys have better luck with Leone than I did?
Okay, so I kind of like my analogy a little better. You shoot your guns and the shells do one orbit of the moon before they come back down and maybe hit your target 6 kilometers away. Because that's pretty much how I feel about the ship. It doesn't feel zippy. I expected it to feel zippy. I expected, it to kind of have that same feel that I have with those cruisers. You get up to speed, you can start to really, zip around, turn left or right, do what you need to do. And it felt a little sluggish. And it seems like, okay, well, you've got a lot of guns, so you should be pretty effective against other destroyers, but you don't really have crazy amounts of HP at tier 6. And I realize I look at the other destroyers and yeah, you've got some more HP, but you definitely cannot take hits in this destroyer. I mean, anything shooting at you and you take pretty massive damage pretty quickly. And I felt like whatever I was trying to shoot at needed to be like pretty much at 6 kilometers. And of course, you're well already detected at that point. So you got to have your guns already pointed in the right direction and hope that, your salvo lands. Now, your guns are pretty accurate ish at that range, but I mean, your shells take forever and a day to get there. And if the person, on the receiving end just goes, oh, those shells are pretty, and then just, barely turns to the left or right, then you just missed. But if you did hit, then yeah, you do solid 3+ salvos, albeit you have to wait an eternity for your guns to reload. So you're waiting on that reload, and don't even get me started. Now, I do love the 12-kilometer sea mines. I love them with the cruisers. So you would think I would love them on the destroyer. And in a way I do. The only issue is, why do ships like Minakaze get like such a ridiculous torpedo reload? Yet this one, you only have 2 launchers doing a spread of 2 torpedoes each, and like you're waiting 45 or something plus? No, it's not even 45. Isn't it like fit? Hold on, let me look at it. It's
high.
It's ridiculous. Like, you have that low of torpedoes and reload time 60 seconds. That's not, with no armament expertise or anything. So you're telling me you have 2 launchers, 2 torpedoes each, and you got to wait a minute to, launch those spreads? No, this ship needs help. And I don't know. I know some of us talked about, what if they dropped it down to tier 5 and kept it, but it's something you're tier 6. Even if you're tier 5, you're up tiered all the time. You're seeing ships vastly, in higher tier. And especially if you're going to run across other destroyers, you're just going to get wrecked.
Arun, Zoop, did you guys have anything positive to say about Leone? I mean, honestly.
The only positive thing I have to say about it is I haven't played it yet. I honestly, I've invested all my time as of late into Azuma and Neustrashimy, so I haven't even touched Yahagi and Leone yet, sadly. But they are on my list to play probably today or tomorrow before they disappear from our ports.
All right. Well, I'm going to skip over Viribus Unitas and Yahagi, because really, I don't feel like either one of them is all that intriguing or special. And I really would have skipped over Leone if I didn't hate her so damn much.
I just want to say with Yahagi real quick, what is up with those guns? I swear, I'm firing, where Furitaka or Aoba, I would shoot and I would hit the target. But with Yahagi, it's the same thing. You fire, your shells go out to the moon, do an orbit, and then come back down maybe a year later and maybe kind of get close to your target.
Yeah, well, like I said, we'll skip over that. I do want to touch on Ranked Sprint Season 3 and the started Ranked Sprint Season 4. So I actually did rank out in Season 3 playing T61, which I found to be absurdly overpowered at tier 6, similarly to Gremyashki, Kamikaze, and Cesare were at tier 5. That said, there were and are a fair number of tier 6 researchable ships, which are good options, at much more so than I feel was the case at tier 5. For those of you guys here that tried out Ranked Sprint Season 3, I'm interested in your impressions, and particularly about the 5v5 format and the upcoming 7v7 format in Season 4.
I liked the 5v5 format. I'm really enjoying these ranked sprints. I'm glad Wargaming has finally given us a little variety. I think the grind on traditional rank was just too much for some people, and this really gives, I don't want to say more casual players, but more time-starved players an actual legitimate chance to rank out. I myself did not rank out. I finished at 4 only because I spent the majority of my time trying to grind the missions in the PEF, which was an absolute mistake. Though when I did switch things up, I think every time I played T61, I won the round in it. And if I didn't win the round, I kept a star. So while I did enjoy Ranked Sprint and I liked the 5v5, I think the T61 was just a little too overpowered for this format, which brings up a bigger question that would be an interesting debate for another time, whether or not certain ships should be barred from certain game types. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it will, but again, that's another conversation for another time. But T61, overwhelmingly, I think, was the destroyer choice among players that actually had it. There were a lot of T61s being played. I think out of the battleship side of things, Fuso proved again, as always, to be the dominant performer, as it always is. Saw a fair amount of Dunkirks being played, and I think they had pretty good success as well, just based on
Arizona's had a lot of success.
Yeah, Arizona too, and I did play Arizona every now and then, and whenever I did, it was lovely going from minuscule damage in the PEF and just belting out close to 100,000 or more in the Arizona. So Arizona is always a powerhouse. So I think those were the main ships. Cruisers, I don't know. I didn't play any cruisers, and I felt bad for cruiser players just because But I did see some cruisers work out fairly well. Galissonier, or however the French pronounce it. Yeah, gasoline. There were a few Intrepid players that I came across that performed very well in it, just being able to post up behind hills and just rain fire across. Yeah, and
Grasses were really good.
Yeah, and I think the USN cruiser, what was it, Dallas? Is that the Tier 6? I can't recall.
Yes,
it's Dallas.
Yeah. So I came across some Dallases that had some pretty good gameplay as well, but I think that's more attributed to the player than the ship itself. So, yeah, the season was fun. I think players resoundingly enjoy ranked sprint. I think it's a great addition. It'll be interesting going from 5v5 to 7v7, keeping it at the same tier, and I don't know. I suspect that might make things just a little more grindy and a little less pleasurable than it was with just 5 players. There's something about the 5v5 that I think was well suited to the tier that it was at. So we'll see how this next season goes.
Just to clarify to anybody else that's wondering, the Intrepid, as in the Essex class carrier, is not in the game. If you caught up on it, because apparently we did. Anyway, unrelated kind of bit, to toot my own horn. During the podcast here, I played a PEF game, and I managed to get 155k damage, which was really nice. Also,
and wait, how many citadels did you have?
One. Only one, on an Emily. But anyway, I actually didn't rank out either. I think I played like one game, but I wanted to mention something else about ranked sprint. You know what Wargaming should do to make people really upset? When the carrier rework ends up going live, they should have a ranked sprint season with only carriers.
Wow. That's... Can you get any more cancer than that? I mean, really?
That would be interesting.
I mean, we could do tier 10, and it could be 12 versus 12.
All right. Well, we were originally going to talk about the upcoming Tier 9 ranked season, but Zoop requested that we talk about patch 0.8.0 and the CV rework here before it goes live. And he was right. The controversy over the rework is coming to a head in the forums, on Reddit, and across social media. The big issue being that Wargaming doesn't seem to have taken community feedback into consideration about how to adjust the rework before release, namely in things like AA sector control, CV ship control, and the like. So my question for you guys is the same as I asked on Twitter yesterday. Is the rework ready for release?
No.
Short answer, no.
It's definitely not ready. And one of the reasons, like the community feedback thing is, they get feedback that says absolutely everything. Like they can literally just pick and choose. They don't even have to pick and choose. They can do literally whatever they want. And I guarantee you somebody suggested this to them because they think it's a good idea. So we can't really say whether they didn't listen to community feedback. They just might not have listened to the community feedback we like or we think is correct. But I think the reason why this rework isn't ready is because, first of all, it's imbalanced. Ships like, basically, if you were to compare the ships, if Midway is a tier 10, Hakuryu is a tier 9. If Lexington is a tier 8, Shokaku is a tier 7. They are not balanced. They're not even like the same zip code in terms of balance, because they just play so differently. Midway's dive bombers are way, way, way too strong. But these aren't really the reasons why it's not ready. It's not ready because it's a buggy mess. Right now, like today, I played a whole bunch of it, like 6-7 hours of the rework in a row. And there's apparently a bug in the game where if you drop with dive bombers or rocket planes sometimes, well, dive bombers quite often actually, your plane becomes slow. I'm talking slow enough that I think, what's the French destroyer that goes like 52 knots?
Le Terrible?
Yeah. If the Terrible were in that match, I think she might actually be able to outrun the planes. And I'm talking like tier 10 Midway planes that say they're going 200 knots. But for some reason, I can barely pass my own carrier with them. And we have bugs like this. There's also still the shadowing bug in the game, which doesn't affect really gameplay, but it's still a visual aspect that you would expect to be fixed in a released version. And then there's the fact that your planes can turn. You sometimes can't launch your planes because it gets stuck, and you literally can't do anything until the game basically restarts. It just locks your plane launching. I think people really dislike the way that automatic damage control party works. There's also the problem in terms of how tanky carriers are versus destroyers, because fire doesn't really do anything to them anymore, meaning that your only chance is to actually torpedo them. And this is something I think Wargaming hasn't really thought about all that much, but it's definitely something that will affect many random players, because people just love chasing the CV, right? Especially at tier 10, where it's an armored deck. You're like, awesome, I hit the CV's deck, I did nothing at all, because there's no damage. Fire lasts for 5 seconds, so what are you going to do? And there are many things that are small like this, but they all add up, and all of it adds up to, in my opinion, the carrier rework just isn't ready. And I really hope Wargaming doesn't push it out in 8.0.
I agree with everything you said there. And I'm always very delicate when I talk about carriers. I have a lot of empathy for those that have been playing carriers for a long time, who have taken the time to become very, very well at carriers, very good players at carriers. Arun, you when you first started off, I remember you specifically being a carrier player, and you're probably one of the best carrier players that I had seen. And this is years ago. So that is not lost on me, the fact that, you've got these veteran players that played one way, and, they're losing that. As someone who never was good at carriers, didn't take the time to get good at them, I do think that the new rework is going to bring a lot more players in, but my concern is it going to keep those players into carriers with just 3 tiers of carriers, like you mentioned? I don't think that's a good thing, having just 3 levels of carriers. But I think the bigger issue right now, like you said, it's buggy. I just don't think things have been well thought out. I think Wargaming is on a path. They've set a date, and they're just going to force this upon us, whether it's ready or not, because they're just tired of the controversy. They're tired of the mess. They're tired of everything else. And I don't think that's the right answer, because there's other aspects that concern me with this carrier rework, and mainly, how the anti-aircraft is going to work on ships. I mean, we don't have, unless it's an option that I missed, which is highly possible. I mean, as a carrier player, are there aural rings that you can put around cruisers, so where their defensive fire starts and ends? Things like that, almost like fog circles. I mean, that would be beneficial to carrier players. Really, I think honestly, and I hate saying this because of the players that do love carriers the current way they are, I really think what Wargaming needs to do, I really think they need to just completely get rid of carriers for the interim, since they're going away anyways, the current play style. Not have them in the game for now, so that there's not this, hey, one day we've got the old style, one day we've got the new style. We've kind of got this no man's land intermediary period for a month or two, where players can adjust to there being no carriers at all, but tinker around with the anti-aircraft settings, create those aural rings or everything else that might be needed, use that as a test bed against just spotting craft and everything else, and then move on from there. It just seems like they're moving too quickly on this, and there's too many variables that they have not thought out about every single aspect, how destroyers are going to interact with them. And that brings me to another point. As a destroyer player, I honestly see that I really think the new carrier players, for players that want to exploit it and go after it, they're going to make destroyers' lives absolutely miserable. And I don't know if you all have noticed this or not, but the fact that, in the lower tiers, you only drop 2 torpedoes at a time or 3 torpedoes at a time, you've basically got the ability to loiter over a destroyer that you've singled out. You can drop torpedoes at them once. You can circle around, drop torpedoes at him again, circle around, drop torpedoes at him again. And if he hasn't popped smoked or, done anything to mitigate that, while he's moving around, he's going to get singled out and fired upon by every single cruiser out there. So, these CVs, I think, are going to be pretty good at picking off destroyers and caps that have strayed too far away. I don't know. It's a mess. That's all I can say.
Well, I'd like to mention earlier, I actually like the idea of the rework. I enjoy playing it, but I don't really know if I like it because it's new or because I actually like it. Because I hear what many people say and I hear their complaints, but when I play the carry rework itself, I'm having fun. But maybe there's another reason. Maybe it's because I'm playing versus bots and, I am in the situation Zoop was with co-op, and I'm enjoying stomping some bots because it's easy and not frustrating.
And I want to get that out there real quick too. That you've brought it now that you brought it up. I personally am enjoying carriers how they are too. I enjoy the rework. I enjoy what they've done with them. The feel, the real time strategy being gone in this third person, first person shooter version, whatever you want to call it. So I do like where they've gone with it. And like you, I just don't think it's ready, and that's where all my misgivings are.
Also, speaking of that, I would recommend something to anybody that wants to try out it feeling or looking cool. Go when the next test starts. Go into a training room with a carrier like Midway or something you're somewhat comfortable with, and pick a map like Islands of Ice with the local weather, or North with local weather, or Trap with a cyclone. Maps like that. And then when you play, you're playing versus bots, of course, play without the UI. Without the UI. It's entirely possible, and I did it on stream many, many, many times, and it looks amazing. And you can play like that. And honestly, it's a lot of fun because, now you're not spotting. Now you don't know where to go based on, hey, there's an indicator there that's red. I need to go there. You have to actually see where the ships are and see all those things. And on top of that, the weather maps just look awesome. Okay, that aside, the most important thing I forgot to mention earlier, why Wargaming must not release this patch so soon. And that's because Tier 4 carriers are insanely boring, except Hosho, but I'll talk about that later. The Tier 4 carriers are just awful. You thought Bogue and Langley and whatnot were bad right now with the RTS view where you can't do manual drops? You haven't seen anything. This new stuff is it's like, I don't know, it's like watching paint dry. In fact, it's worse because you have to actively watch paint dry. It's just terrible, terrible, terrible. And Wargaming must get this right, because Tier 4 is the one carrier type that everyone is going to want to play once the rework goes out. And if experienced players go, wow, this is so bad, and they do this en masse, what happens is that new players and other players are going to get discouraged because everybody says that the new carrier rework sucks. And Wargaming must get Tier 4 right. It doesn't even matter if they do it like temporarily, like give us much stronger Tier 4 carriers, or I don't care. I mean, I guess balance still matters, but I don't really care what they do, but they must make it interesting, because if Tier 4 carriers aren't interesting, the whole thing will fail. And if the whole thing fails, you'll have a lot of upset people, and yeah, you can't really fault them at that.
So I have a question for you on that. One of the reasons why I have a problem with Viribus Unitas is it's not fun to play. It's not, and whenever I play tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 ships, they're not fun for me to play. So just because it's not fun to play, I don't know that is exclusive to just carriers.
Oh, no. Of course there are ships that aren't fun to play, but the problem is that both tier 4 carriers are insanely boring. And the biggest issue is that the reason we're getting the rework, well, other than maybe the console thing, is because we need more players to play carriers. The game, is supposed to have carriers in them, but if nobody actually plays the class, then we don't get matches with them. And the game, as a result, plays out differently than it should. And the problem is that if people don't find carriers fun early on, they're not going to stick through it. And if they don't stick through it, we're in the exact same situation we are right now, where we just won't have enough carrier players.
I agree with Arun 100% right there. Coming from someone who didn't play carriers before, was very excited about the rework. When I play the low tier carriers, I liked the gameplay style. I really like where they went with it. I hated playing it though, because it was the most boring thing in the world. I honestly think I fell asleep at one point, like nodded off, had one of those micro sleeps or whatever. It might have been the alcohol, I don't know, but it is snooze.
You've never done that before.
No.
You definitely didn't do that on my back
No,
patio.
I didn't. But Arun brings up a very, very, very important point. This is going to be many players' first look at aircraft carriers. It's going to be many players' first attempt at aircraft carriers. And if wargaming does not grab them right away, like Arun said, it's all for nothing, because you're not going to increase the carrier population. And it begs the question, why was this even done? So how to fix that? I don't know. Maybe drop more than 2 torps. I don't know. That's another reason why I don't think this is ready to go right now.
I would actually like to add that everybody said that Hosho was the worst one at it as well, because you have only the rocket planes that don't do all that much because you only fire a few rockets and they barely do any damage. And you have AP bombs at a time where they just aren't very strong.
Oh yeah, there aren't torps. There aren't torps, are there, in that first tier?
Not on Hosho. I don't remember on Langley. I
don't think there are.
There still wasn't. I think that was HE bombs.
Yeah, so my mistake. You don't even have torps, so it's even more boring.
But I found that Hosho was probably the hardest carrier that I played in any of the reworks, as in you could do something with it that I never needed to do with any of the other carriers. And that is, the AP bombs have ballistics now, right? Which means that at certain angles, at certain times in the drop, pattern, the bombs will drop at a different angle towards the ship. If you do a dive bomber goes up and then comes down, right? But if it comes down, it gives some horizontal velocity to the bombs. And as a result, they won't penetrate quite as deeply into the armor. However, if you drop the bombs when you're really, really high up there, they will come down at an almost 90-degree angle and as a result have more penetrating power. And I actually tried this. I was unable to penetrate the Citadel and I think even the deck armor of some tier 4 battleship with it. But if I tried dropping the bombs when the dive bomber was at the very peak of the drop, when it was at the top, I know it's called a dive bomber, but still, when it was at the top of the drop, like right at the start, if those bombs hit, I actually got Citadels. And when I tried it over and over, I was actually able to get it consistently, basically, on those battleships. And while this is interesting to me, this seems like a really, really out of place thing for the tier 4 carrier. Because you don't need to do this on the Hakuryu. You basically don't gain anything from it. But on the Hosho, for some reason, that's like the only way to make her do respectable amounts of damage. That seems kind of backwards.
Yeah, I think that the conclusion is that the CV rework isn't a bad thing, but it needs more help. And that's, I'm going to defer to you guys because I've played, a dozen or so games on the CV rework in this latest PTS, but it's just, it's not my gameplay style. Like I found even the high tier gameplay style to be boring. It's just not for me. So, but that's fine. Like, I don't think that everybody needs to be engaged by it. I'm engaged by a lot of other aspects of this game. So
I would like to add one more thing. We hear a lot about, Zoup talked about this earlier. Well, I completely agree that carriers can make the life of a destroyer hell with spotting, and they can do it right now too. But the thing is that the normal type of gameplay you do with the torpedo bombers, whatnot, that doesn't really promote you to keep a target spotted for a long time because you want to fly your planes back so you can do the next strike. However, with the rework, you're going to be buzzing around that destroyer for a very long time. I think spotting does need to go away. So the idea that I've talked about and many others have talked about for a long while, where you only give a target lock onto this destroyer for ships that are within, let's say, 8 kilometers. But that's not what I wanted to really talk about. I wanted to talk about the fact that many people seem to be under the impression that these new carriers absolutely destroy destroyers and, well, any other class because of how easy it is to hit the rocket planes and how easy it is to hit with the dive bombers and whatnot. But I actually tried 1 versus 1s where I played the Harugumo versus Midway, and I won the fight. As in, we were playing on North, The fight took 15 minutes because Haruguma has a hard time killing that type of a carrier. It took 15 minutes, but I killed the carrier. I didn't die because it was entirely possible for me to mostly evade most of the rocket planes. And you might think, okay, it happened with one person, maybe with somebody else it wouldn't. I picked one of the CCs, I did the same thing, and I still won. Well, in that case, I think we played Lexington or Shokaku and Kiev. And I also played the Republique versus a Midway. In that case, I lost, but it took 15 minutes. So it's entirely possible for you to survive for a long time. However, it's kind of irrelevant because carriers aren't going to attack you when you're alone, right? But I just wanted to point out that the CVs themselves aren't necessarily super powerful, even though they might seem like it. And actually, on that note, there's one other thing. I noticed that if you look at any of the anti-air stats, they don't make sense. Because if you add up the numbers, Haruguma's anti-air, long range, and ends up being something like, let's say, 70-80% of what the Republique's is, according to all of the numbers we have. And the mid-range is like, let's say, 20-30% of what a Republique's is. However, for some reason, when I actually played the Haruguma, I didn't shoot down attack planes. I shot down 2 attack planes in 15 minutes. 2 in 15 minutes. Whereas when I played the Republique, I shot down like 45 in that same amount of time against the same CV. So there must be some kind of hidden variables at play. And for some reason, Destroyer anti-air is just basically useless. You can spec anti-air, you cannot spec anti-air. It doesn't make any difference.
Well, we are getting close to the end of time here. Zoop, did you have any final thoughts before we close it out for the day?
No. I just really, like everyone here, would like them to kind of cool the afterburners on the whole carrier rework and, just reevaluate things. They've got a good start to it. They've got a good base. It just needs a little more refinement. That's all. That's all I got.
Vanessa, how about you?
Pretty much encapsulated all the thoughts and opinions on the CVs. It's just, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's going to be it for this week, folks. I thank you. As always, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Warships Podcast and Twitter at Warships Podcast for updates between episodes. Don't forget to check out Arun on YouTube and Twitch as well. And I think, Zoop, you've been putting out some video a day for quite a while now, and they're doing some streaming as well, right?
Yeah, every other day. Streaming, not so much. I don't know. I get lazy sometimes. I'm enjoying Black Ops 4 right now, so just kicking back and relaxing. But yeah, YouTube for sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, we of course want to thank our amazing Patreon backers. If you're interested in supporting us, please consider becoming a backer yourself. We do appreciate all the help that our backers give us, because you are the reason that we are able to make this podcast. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.